service say. Which one off? Good.
Radioactivity presents The Upper Berth, based on the short story by F. Marion Crawford.
I've sailed across the Atlantic back and forth for as long as I can remember. I had my favorite ships, and I was only cheated out of a good voyage once in my life. I remember it very well. It was June, and I was on the Kamchatka. It was a nice enough vessel, clean and well run, a fine little ship in every respect. It would be my last time at sea, and it would also be the last time with a Kamchatka. I came aboard and gave the steward my things. He took one look at my cabin number 105, and he seemed uneasy. But at the time I chose to ignore it, and I followed him down. 105 was on the port side. It was nothing special. 2 beds, a tiny bathroom, and a chair that had 2 blankets folded. Though the very air in the room was heavy with a sort of sad and lonely atmosphere. After a walk around, I returned to my cabin, and I saw that I had a roommate. A woman by the look of her coat and small bag. She wasn't in the cabin. I'd guessed that she'd arrived some time after I went back on deck. So I wasn't very happy about sharing, but I decided that it only made sense to make the best of things. That night as I lay in my bed falling asleep, she came in. She was very tall, with pale hair and skin. I immediately disliked her, and I decided that I would do whatever I could to avoid her. With that thought, I drifted to sleep. Then, later in the night, What? Why did she run out the door like that? Whoa. Nightmares? Sounds like it. And she left the door open. Ooh, it's cold. That smell. Is that dampness? Where did she go? I shut the door and I got back into bed. The smell was still strong. I must have fallen back to sleep because I woke up an hour later and I realized my roommate was back in the upper berth. I heard her there anyhow. When I woke up the next day, the cabin was even colder. I got up and saw the porthole was open. Shutting it, I turned and saw the curtains drawn in the upper berth. Must still be asleep, I thought. Obviously seasickness. I left the cabin, and I decided to get some fresh air before breakfast.
Good morning.
Well, it's a morning. I don't know if I'd call it a good one.
You just come aboard.
Oh, yesterday.
I'm the ship's doctor. Pretty cold this morning, isn't it?
Well, it was definitely cold in our cabin last night. You wouldn't believe it, but I found the portal wide open, and then there was this awful damp smell.
Oh, sorry to hear it. What cabin are you in?
105.
Oh, 105.
Yes?
On the port side.
Yes.
Do you have a companion staying with you?
Yeah, I do. Very odd woman. She got up last night suddenly, and she ran out of the place. She came back later. I guess she was just sick. What other questions?
Look, if you take my advice, you'll find another cabin as soon as possible.
What are you talking about?
Just get out of there. Now. It's a strange cabin. The last 3 people who stayed there, well, they all had roommates. They described them just as you did.
And what happened to them?
They went overboard.
Shortly after breakfast I was called in to speak to the captain. He told me that there was a report of a passenger who emerged from 105, roaming the deck last night, and did I know her. I repeated the same story that I told the doctor about my roommate bolting out of the night, but I'd assumed she returned. When a search was done, she was nowhere to be found. If she didn't come back, who did? When I returned to my cabin that night, slightly dazed, I found the portal, once again, open. A stewardess came in, and I made my feelings clear. And it shouldn't just open like that. If the ship rolled to one side and let water in... Are you shaking? Look. What's wrong with this cabin? Why is everyone so afraid of it?
Well, it's just that porthole. Because for as long as I've been working here, it hasn't stayed shut yet. But if you really want, I'll see that it's nailed so that even 10 men couldn't open it. But it won't do any good. Believe me, it just won't do any good.
The stewardess did as I asked, and I went to bed. In the later hours of that night, I woke to a chill ocean air. I shot up and stared. It was open. The portal was wide open. I ran to it and was about to slam it shut when I heard something moving behind me. I turned. I saw nothing but darkness, but I heard what sounded like a kind of breathing. I sprang across the room and tore the curtains away from the upper berth. Thrusting my hands in, I felt around to see if anyone was there. There was someone. It was like I'd put my hand into a cold cellar. From inside, a gust of wind came out, smelling of a sweet, stagnant seawater. And then I caught a human arm, but it was wet and icy cold. I pulled, but the thing came at me. It felt like a clammy, oozy mass. In an instant, the door swung open and the thing ran out. Even in the state I was in, I tried to follow it, but it seemed to disappear into the foggy sea night air. I went back to my cabin and I felt around the upper bed, but it was totally dry. But the smell was still there. I went back to bed, very shaken, and I didn't sleep. Besides making a mental note that I owed the stewardess an apology, I decided I would go to the doctor at daybreak.